But yeah, a lot of big crazy news. We'll get to it. And obviously there's big news in relation to casting, announcing of upcoming movies. And I have done a little bit of comic research for you guys.
What was the big announcement?
The big announcement is, the big announcement is who's going to play Dr. Doom.
There we go.
If you haven't already heard this at this point, Dr. Doom is being played by none other than
Robert Downey Jr.
Iron Man himself.
At first, it was like, oh snap, this is awesome. And then when you sit there and think, you're like, well, he had the perfect ending. Why do we need him to come back? And it's like, okay, he's playing a different character, but is he? Or is he just playing a variant? And then all of that kind of starts to weigh in, and then I'm not as excited for it.
Is that they had the entire cast of the Fantastic Four come out on stage. They showed the title card, they showed the font, and they announced the official name, which is Fantastic Four: The First Steps.
Agatha! Agatha! Agatha!
Agatha all along.
Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Aaron.
We put out new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And today we're talking about all the news that just dropped at San Diego Comic-Con.
3, 2, 1.
Action. Woo boy, we got a lot of big news that just dropped.
Woo doggy. So we're talking about the Marvel news mostly, because I mean, what we mostly focus on is like Marvel and DC, and DC really didn't drop much from what I can tell. There's like a Creature Commandos trailer, there's a new logo, but like nothing too crazy.
Cool.
Marvel dropped some crazy stuff. Your milk dripping from your chin hairs. I just would have wanted to been told if it was me. But yeah, a lot of big crazy news. We'll get to it. And obviously there's big news in relation to casting, announcing of upcoming movies. And I have done a little bit of comic research for you guys. I have a big shout out and thanks to Variant Comics for helping me out with a lot of the information. You can check out their YouTube channel for more specified and detail-oriented information from the comics than I'm going to give. I'm going to kind of more succinctly break down what they said. And for you as audience members, if you're not familiar with Secret Wars or who Doom is, I'll explain kind of the general idea of that plot line and that character's backstory for you so you can get an idea of who they are and how important they are to the world. But if you want to see more detail, you can check out their page. They help me out a ton. I'm mostly a DC reader, so my Marvel comic knowledge is a lot more limited than my DC comic knowledge.
So what happened at Comic-Con?
So Comic-Con Hall H, Marvel basically just made it their bitch.
I feel like they always do it. Whenever Comic-Con they show up at, they're dropping bombs. I feel like the last big time, in 2023, we got a lot of news and a lot of it hasn't happened.
Yeah. Make sure to stick around to the end. That's when we'll get to the biggest news, explaining who Dr. Doom is and what Secret Wars is and the big things that were announced. But to start, Aaron said what happened at Comic-Con. A few big notable things. One is that they had the entire cast of the Fantastic Four come out on stage. They showed the title card, they showed the font, and they announced the official name, which is Fantastic Four: The First Steps. So I originally didn't like the title because I thought it made them sound like babies taking their first steps. A little bit more likened to it because our friend Zach, who's a longtime friend of the show, who's been on it a lot, one of our best friends, he likened it to them being astronauts and like the first steps on the moon, which makes more sense. And I kind of should have thought of that myself. But it makes me like it a little bit more.
Idiot.
I still feel like it's treating them like fledgling heroes, which I get it's an origin for them, but it's still like, oh, they're taking their first little steps as heroes. Like, I feel like that's the double entendre, which to me kind of undermines any seriousness, which they're kind of been doing.
Aren't they taking place in an alternative universe?
In the 60s.
In the 60s, and it's like a futuristic 60s,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the director was saying that it's a futuristic 60s, and he likes the 60s because that timeline, he likens it to like being hopeful and optimistic, and it's basically when we were trying to get to the moon. So that's why it makes sense that they're astronauts, because U.S. landed on the moon in our real life timeline in 1969 is when we put men on the moon. And so I think that's the goal in this 60s era timeline is going to be space travel. Even so, you can see influence of like what they thought of as futuristic in that kind of 60s, 70s time period because they showed the Fantasticar at. Did you see this? There's a video of them showing the Fantasticar, which is like the transportation vehicle that the Fantastic Four uses, and it's obviously They've credited it to being inspired by the Jetsons flying car, and you can see the inspiration when you look at it. So you can find these videos online from San Diego Comic-Con. But they also brought out all of our cast members. So Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and the guy from The Bear.
That's all he gets.
I like him. He's cousin from The Bear. He plays the Thing. Vanessa Kirby is Invisible Woman. Pedro Pascal is Mr. Fantastic, and Joseph Quinn is our Johnny Storm, Human Torch. And Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, is going to be closely tethered to a villain that was announced, which we'll get to later on. His name is Victor Von Doom. We'll talk about who he is and his connection to Reed Richards later in the episode. But I imagine we might see an inkling of, or more of him in the Fantastic Four First Steps movie.
Yeah, it was announced that the Fantastic Four is going to be in both Avengers films that are coming out, which was probably the biggest announcement that Marvel dropped, right? Was the announcement of the next two Avengers.
Yeah, so they announced Avengers Secret Wars, and then after that they said, well, we have to set up a big character that's going to be in that, and they announced Avengers Doomsday. And in doing so, they also said that a lot of the characters you've seen on stage today are going to be in it, insinuating that Fantastic Four as well as the Thunderbolts would both be included in those two movies.
Yeah, Thunderbolts!
Finally the Thunderbolts!
Let's go!
Okay, chill out. But back to Fantastic Four news, they showed a teaser kind of trailer out from my understanding, or clips from the movie. They showed the group of the Fantastic Four on kind of like a game show in the 60s.
How'd they show clips there if they're starting filming this week?
Dude, I don't know, but they showed they might have even been stills or test footage, but they showed Galactus. They showed and Galactus is being done as a giant celestial being, not as a smoke cloud this time, which is kind of nice. You see like his eyes through like this giant window.
Yeah.
So that'll be really interesting to get Galactus involved in this movie. I mean, do him justice as opposed to what we got in the Fantastic Four sequel back in the day. But that's all I have for the Fantastic Four news. We can talk about the Thunderbolts a little bit.
Yeah, we're holding everyone on to the end. Sorry, you gotta wait.
So the Thunderbolts is a big team up, kind of like classic MCU anti-heroes. Heroes with a little bit of a darker edge. They're bringing back from Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think her name's Ghost. Mm-hmm. They're bringing back Red Guardian from Black Widow. They're bringing back Yelena, played by Florence Pugh from Black Widow. Man, you should have heard the cheer for Yelena, for Florence Pugh when she came out. I swear it was louder than everybody else's, possibly even louder than Sebastian Stan's when he came out, with Bucky came out. But so they had the whole cast of the whole group come out.
Red Guardian.
And then they finally announced David Arbor coming out on stage as Red Guardian, but he comes out from the crowd in full costume as Red Guardian doing the Alexi accent. And then he turns to the stage and goes, guys, you didn't get my email? I said we were all going to come in costume. And then he like walks off crying. David Arbor is just really funny, and he seems like a good guy in real life.
The suit looked cool too.
Yeah, his suit is awesome. I kind of wanted more from him in Black Widow because he's like, he's like a Russian Captain America.
Yeah. But
Taskmaster's on the team as well. So that team kind of has like 3 cast members from Black Widow.
Yeah.
So it could be interesting. They also brought out Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who is playing kind of like the Nick Fury of the Thunderbolts. She works for the government, and she said for herself that her character is like trying to seize power and all these things. So she's not as noble maybe as some of the previous iterations we've gotten with the Nick Fury type organizer of the team.
Isn't the other Captain America?
Yes, Wyatt Russell came out as well. That's a good one to note as well. Yeah. He's now playing U.S. agent, and he said that by the end of this movie, I believe he made a statement that the audience is going to like his character a lot more. So maybe the theory is he's going to be more redeemed in this movie because he's just kind of purely villainous in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I mean, someone's got to be. They're a ragtag. This is like the Suicide Squad-esque team. So like, come on.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be.
They're all just like heroes by the end. We saved the day.
Well, the thing is, it's kind of a stark shift because some of them are just straight villains in another movie. And then like Bucky's had such an arc to become an Avenger. I mean, I feel like the Thunderbolts is a step down for Bucky. He's like a full-fledged hero, but joining all these other people that are more morally questionable. I mean, you can call Bucky morally questionable, but is it really his fault that he did bad things while literally being mind controlled?
Sebastian Stan's like, are people still having fun? Back in my day, you should have seen the numbers we were doing.
He's like, this movie better make $1 billion. But yeah, that movie looks like it's going to be fun. I think we also got a group out for Captain America 4, A Brave New World. And you should have heard the eruption of applause for Harrison Ford. I mean, Harrison Ford is nerd Jesus. He's Indiana Jones. He's Han Solo. Now he's going to be Red Hulk. He's in so many huge properties, so many big sci-fi movies. He's Deckard from Blade Runner. So, I mean, that's just boner fuel for San Diego Comic-Con right there. But he came out on stage. They erupted and lost their minds. And he said how he had been excited because so many great actors he's seen coming out into the Marvel world. He was excited to join. And they showed a clip of him standing in front of the White House as the president transforming into the Red Hulk, which would be really cool to see. I still haven't been able to see that, but they'll release it to wider audiences soon. You just get those benefits when you pay $1,000 to be in Hall H and wait.
His interviews are hilarious.
He's a funny guy, dude. He's past the bullshit. He's like, I'm too old for this.
He's like, who would win in a fight, this character or this character that you've played? And he's like, I hate these questions. I'm not going to answer, but I really appreciate the opportunity. I was dying. It's so funny.
He's the man, dude. He is so funny. I'd be nervous to interview him.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the opportunity of a lifetime. You can't turn down asking Harrison Ford some questions.
These people just need to stop asking such stupid questions.
Yeah.
I've sent you a few from this last week.
Ask him a cool question. Like, how has filming changed from when you were a sci-fi icon in the 80s to now? Like, what did you notice was different on set? He'd probably be willing to talk about stuff like that.
Boom. Disney, hire us. What the heck? What are we waiting for?
But yeah, that Brave New World has some cool footage. Am I missing anything from Marvel? I mean, they announced some animated property work. They announced
we're stalling here.
What If Season 3, Marvel Zombies animated.
Agatha
all along. I think I'm missing out on something else animated, but there's a lot of properties. I mean, there's an Ironheart movie that's going to be coming out. So we got little tidbits here and there from all these little projects that maybe aren't as well known. But the big news came. We're finally here. You probably skipped here if you had the button on the bottom to get to the big news. Was, like Aaron touched on earlier, they announced Avengers Secret Wars to come out in 2026. Was it 2026 or 2027? Can you look that up for me?
Yeah.
Because back-to-back years, we're supposed to get Avengers Doomsday followed by Avengers Secret Wars. And I have a little bit to touch on for Doomsday to explain for you guys who Doctor Doom is. If you're more of a casual fan, you maybe aren't familiar with him, or you've only seen Doctor Doom from Victor Von Doom in the Fantastic Four movies from the 2000s. I'll give you some more detail on who he is and why he's such a big deal. And also Secret Wars, if you've only really heard that name in passing or never heard it at all, I can tell you what that plot line's about.
26 for Doomsday and 27 for Secret Wars.
So yeah, back-to-back years. So the people who announced this, who told the audience this, Aaron?
Was it the Russo brothers?
Yes, it was.
It was the Russo brothers.
So Joe and Anthony Russo were announced that they are coming back to direct the next two Avengers movies.
We were literally just talking about this.
You were saying how you wish they would come back.
Yeah.
Because there was rumors. So if you don't know, Joe and Anthony Russo directed Captain America, Winter Soldier, followed by Civil War, followed by Infinity War, followed by Endgame.
4 of the best movies in the MCU.
So there's a lot of audience faith in them. So smart of Marvel to bring them back and getting them on these big team-up movies. So they're going to do Doomsday and Secret Wars, and they sound like they're really into doing the comics justice. I think Joe Russo, I think he's the one that said that Secret Wars was the first comic that he read that got him into comic books and into loving Marvel. So he said that this story is even bigger than Endgame, and I'll tell you guys why. Let me finally stop leading you along. So, first of all, should I start with who Doctor Doom is or start with what happens in Secret Wars?
No, we need to get to the point here of the big announcement. What was the big announcement?
The big announcement is... The big announcement is who's going to play Doctor Doom.
There we go.
If you haven't already heard this at this point, Doctor Doom is being played by none other than
Robert Downey Jr.
Iron Man himself. So they brought a whole group out on stage with Doctor Doom, like cheap plastic masks. And then they're like, if we're going to have this character that's so important, he's one of the most complicated, best characters in all of Marvel, I think we need the best actor in the world to play him. A guy in a green suit steps forward with the Doctor Doom mask on, whips it off, throws his hands out in the Iron Man 1 pose from when the rockets blasted off, and Iron Man himself has the audience erupt in explosion like you're seeing Cap pick up Mjolnir for the first time. Like, this audience
to be there would have been insane.
Yeah, to see it for the first time. Because I heard somebody shout like another actor's name.
They said Jared Leto.
Yeah, they were like, Jared Leto, DJ.
God, it wasn't Jared Leto.
So Aaron, just tell me how you feel about this news before I get around to telling the audience who Doctor Doom is.
So At first, it was like, oh snap, this is awesome. And then when you sit there and think, you're like, well, he had the perfect ending. Why do we need him to come back? And it's like, okay, he's playing a different character, but is he? Or is he just playing a variant? And then all of that kind of starts to weigh in, and then I'm not as excited for it. I'm more so hesitant, more so worried that it might tarnish the legacy that we had before this, because he was the face of Marvel for what, 15 years? He was Iron Man in what, 10 plus projects? So like, he's obviously a huge character, and to have the same actor play someone else or a different version of kind of takes away a little bit. And we just saw that with Deadpool and Wolverine, with Wolverine coming back too. But I feel like that's a slightly different tone. Like Deadpool and Wolverine, it's like a buddy comedy kind of movie, you know? The Avengers, they're like these epic team up movies.
I also feel like they unearthed Logan for a good reason, for a team up that is not only iconic in comics and video games and animated stuff and is iconic to audiences. It's a team up that we've been begging for.
Yeah.
Logan and Deadpool are two like meant to be together. And
it's
then this is
specifically
like
the actors too.
This
we wanted Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, and they're good friends in real life. And with the and plus, like when they were on screen together before, we didn't get to do it justice. So this fixed that.
Yeah.
And what I feel more about bringing back RDJ to play a different character is I've been saying that I feel like it reeks of desperation. It's less of like pleasing audiences and more of like, how can we get audiences to come back and enjoy our movies as much? Like maybe if we bring back this faithful actor who we know they've loved.
It's going to get all of the audience members that aren't like your diehard fans like me and you, who are invested in the comics and the lore and the continuity and all of this stuff in the characters themselves, even beyond the MCU films. It's going to capture the audience that is like fans and haven't been in a while.
I think it'll work.
I think it's going to make a lot of money for them.
There's a lot of like people in the film community that find it kind of
frustrating.
Yeah. Because I don't know. It's fine. It's fine. We'll see how it actually pans out. It was cool, mind-blowing to see the reveal itself.
Yeah. So tell me, who is he playing?
He's playing Dr. Doom, also known as Victor Von Doom, which is the most villain-sounding name that you ever heard in your life. This dude never had a chance. So Victor Von Doom was born in the fictional Marvel country of Latveria. He was born as a poor gypsy. His mother was a gypsy. She was trying to seek a better life for her son Victor, and she kind of delved into like these dark mystical arts. And she ended up making a deal with Marvel's devil, which is named Mephisto. He's a big character if you haven't heard of him before, but he's just the devil of Marvel. So she struck a deal with the devil, and in doing so, she kind of became his prisoner. So as Victor grew up, he kind of also studied the dark arts, and he also studied science. So he was trying to find a way to save his mother and bring her back and fix his circumstances. Word spread of his talent and skills, and the U.S. contracted him and brought him over to New York, and they gave him a lab and put him in school. And the person he was supposed to be a roommate with in school was none other than Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. So they ended up not being roommates in this storyline. I think it's from a comic book called The Book of Doom. They ended up not being roommates, but they would become academic rivals and competitors. And eventually, Victor Von Doom becomes the supervillain because he combines his intellect and technology with like the mystical arts, and the mystical arts in the true sense of Doctor Strange. So the reason he's such an imposing villain is because his powers come from both. And in one journey into the underworld or Hades, where he's trying to save his mother, he gets injured, and that's where his face gets scarred. So he has a completely damaged face. That's why when you look up images of Dr. Doom, you'll see this metal mask that he wears. And throughout different iterations of comics, it's made of different materials, but just know that it's really strong, and it's adhered to his skin through magic. And he studies with monks and becomes like the leader of this community of monks. He has all this background information that makes him like imposing, very intelligent, very spiritually strong. And all these things combined to make him this really imposing villain, where people would argue he's one of the top 3 or top 5 smartest people in the MCU. You could say Iron Man, Reed Richards, and Victor Von Doom could be the 3 smartest humans in the MCU. People would argue he's one of the top 3 or 5 strongest in terms of mystical or magic abilities. There's even a quote where Doctor Strange in the comics says that he studied, he could become the Sorcerer Supreme himself. And there's a future timeline where future Victor Von Doom is the Sorcerer Supreme. And he's one of the strongest intellectually, mystically, and just in certain aspects in terms of like raw power because of the combination of science and mystical powers. So what are his powers? He has magical abilities, so spell casting. So think like Doctor Strange, how there's kind of an innumerable amount of things that he can do. With spells, he can move really fast, enhance strength because of the suit and magic. He can teleport. He can summon things. So just think like all things magic.
Anything he wants.
Yeah, basically. That's why he's so powerful. And then there's a version of him that is considered one of the most powerful, possibly the most powerful villains in all of Marvel, called God Emperor Doom, where he takes on the abilities of the Beyonder, which is what kind of ties us into Secret Wars storyline. But you can look up images online, seeing him literally reach into Thanos' chest and rip Thanos' spinal column and skull out of Thanos' body. So that's how much stronger God Emperor Doom is from the previous big bad of the last saga of the MCU.
Crazy.
Just insane.
So how are they going to do this with Robert Downey Jr.?
There's one theory that he's from a comic book storyline called Infamous Iron Man, which is in a future where Iron Man's in a coma and Victor Von Doom decides to take on the role of Iron Man to try and do good. I think he's still kind of, even in being a hero, kind of more of an anti-hero in that storyline, more of dark vibes and doing by whatever means necessary, but he's trying to protect the Earth. So people were theorizing that because obviously Infamous Iron Man, RDJ's Iron Man, there's a line that when he takes off the mask, he says, "New mask, same task." I think what he's referring to is real world. Like the actor is wearing a new mask, but the same task is to provide enjoyment to the audience and make great movies. But it could have more meaning, you never know. Also, when they announced him, they said playing Victor Von Doom. They didn't say playing like
Tony
variant
Stark, yeah.
Tony Stark. You could,
I think that's just a misdirection because Marvel's been known for doing that.
I mean, they do it all the time. They even go to the lengths of editing trailers. Like if you look at the Infinity War trailer, Hulk is running, but in the movie, he's wearing the Hulkbuster armor. So
he's not there.
Oh, he's not in that scene. But yeah, throughout the movie, he wears the Hulkbuster armor instead of being the Hulk.
Yeah.
So they convinced us he would be the Hulk in the climax, which is frustrating. Don't get me started. But I think that potentially what they'll do is, because one of the many powers that I named for Doctor Doom is that he can travel between dimensions or the multiverse with his teleportation abilities and magical abilities. I mean, obviously we know he can go to the underworld in Hades, and he does multiple times. In comics, he goes like every year to try to save his mother and fails time and time again. Was my original point. I think since he can travel between verses, maybe he'll be trying to conquer universes or somehow use his powers to get to our main line, sacred timeline, and affect the villains there. But once they set him up in the verse, whether it's through Fantastic Four First Steps or specifically in Doomsday, then we get to the Secret Wars storyline, which is really interesting. Before I touch on exactly what that is and how it incorporates Doctor Doom, I said that how he's kind of like the strongest in some sense and smartest in some sense. I want to talk about how he's the meanest in some sense. There's a comic book storyline I read about called Marvel Knights, where Doctor Doom enlists the help of Doctor Strange to help him go to the underworld and try and save his mother. And when he gets down there, he can't defeat Mephisto. So what he does is he offers up a deal to Mephisto where he'll trade in Doctor Strange in exchange for his mother, which is crazy because Doctor Strange came down there to help him save his mother, risked his own life. And even Mephisto, the devil, says to him, like, that is unforgivable. He's like, no deal. And then his mother, too, is like, anyone who would betray their ally to Mephisto is no son of mine. So he was too evil for the devil and too evil for his mother. So that's how mean this guy is. Truly, truly villainous. But let's talk about Secret Wars real quick. So Avengers Secret Wars, if we're going based on the comic book storyline, is potentially one of, if not the greatest crossover event in history. So what Avengers Secret Wars is based on is that there's this celestial being called the Beyonder. If Mephisto is the devil, think Beyonder is God. He can do anything and everything. He becomes enamored with the ideas of heroes and villains in the 616 timeline. So he rips villains and heroes out of the 616 timeline and the Ultimate timeline, which has like Ultimate Spider-Man and all these characters. So that's where we get Miles Morales. He takes a set of heroes and villains from each of those and pulls them into like these ships. And then the next thing they see is a bunch of stars getting destroyed and then a planet getting built, basically. So think of a being for the Beyonder that can destroy stars and create planets. That's how all-powerful he is. And eventually Doctor Doom will take his powers, by the way. So that planet, they call Battle World, and he's basically pitting the heroes and villains up against each other to fight one another for his amusement, I guess. And he tells them that the winner of this gladiatorial arena will be able to take whatever they want because he's the Beyonder. He's like a genie from Aladdin. He'll grant their wish, unlimited power, unlimited wealth, whatever they want, he'll grant it to them. So you get this really cool crossover event that includes Spider-Man, includes Captain Marvel, Hawkeye, on the villainous, and more, tons more. And then on the villain side, Doctor Doom is there, Galactus is there, Ultron's there, I think Loki's there as well. All kinds of iconic villains from throughout the storyline. And then you get to see them fight, like essentially arena style. So that's this comic book. It's Secret Wars was originally in 1984 to 1985, I believe a 12-issue run. And then it came back in 2015 with a modernized run, which is, I believe, the one where you can see God Emperor Doom rip the spine out of Thanos because Thanos is like pressing him and he's like, dude, you don't know who I am. I'm going to kill you. So Doom is way more impressive than people realize. If you haven't heard of him, he's a top tier villain, one of the scariest, baddest, and most famous of the comic villains in the MCU. And he could be a big bad on a higher scale than Thanos. And Secret Wars is one of the greatest, biggest storylines. It's the first place we ever saw Spider-Man's black symbiote suit, which gives us the setup for Venom eventually coming in because he hadn't been created at that point in the 80s. So that's how iconic the run is. That's how iconic Dr. Doom is. We can expect some really cool stuff moving forward.
I'm excited to see how they bring in Robert Downey Jr. into all of this.
I'm excited to see how they do the Beyonder. Is he just going to appear and it's like Secret Wars is just this movie where it's like shock value and cameos and fights, or is it going to be more integrated story with Beyonder kind of sprinkled more throughout the MCU?
Hopefully more of the story. The cameos are all really cool in your first viewing, and then after that, you're kind of just wanting a story.
Magneto's in Secret Wars as well, so there could be a lot of cool villain appearances.
All right. Well, what are you most excited for? What do you think of the Robert Downey Jr. news of him playing Doom? Let us know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. We post new full episodes every Monday and Thursday, and we've been putting out extra episodes. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, notification bell, so you don't miss a thing.
Yeah, make sure to check us out on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and X, all the places that you get your short form content. We post videos daily. Make sure you check us out on Spotify and give us a 5-star rating. It helps the show grow and be found by new listeners. But the best thing you can do for us to help the show grow organically is to share us with friends and family, especially those that loves movies, TV shows, comics, and more, like we like to talk about on here. We do have a Discord if you want to talk with us about that stuff and let us know your thoughts. However, the price has been going up. Aaron, how much is that now?
Right now, it is free. Thank you so much for watching, and
that's a wrap.